Hello and welcome to another week of Abbie Thoughts. I hope you're doing well this October, and I have been having a few thoughts this week. Hopefully, we all hope we're all ticking along and keeping the thoughts going. And one of the first things I was thinking about a lot was wild swimming. And I was talking to a friend the other day, and she mentioned she jumped into the lake at our local park. A few of her and some of her friends had been swimming around in the local lake in a park that's near me. And, as you do, wild swimming. I've kind of seen different people doing this lately. Pictures of them swimming in the local forest, river, some kind of naked living, return to the land type of scene. I think there was that Ed Sheeran video as well, some months back, where all him and his sorry chums were all larking around. And isn't it so, um, I don't know, like natural and a bit Little House on the Prairie if it took place in Britain. So it did get me thinking, what is this all about? Am I supposed to be jumping around in the local rivers? I do remember open water swimming sort of when I was about 11, 12, a few times. Also, all the times you go to the beach, oceans do count as part of wild swimming. So I did get interested in the topic and I think I need to do a deep dive, literally, on this topic and see what it's about. I do have to mention that my friend did throw up her evening meal about 5 hours after her swim, so possibly she was actually swimming in sewage and it wasn't the perfect little idyllic scene that we like to paint when we think about swimming around in our local reservoirs. But pond water, not always the best thing to be churning yourself around in. But then sometimes you just can't plan, can you? If it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Sometimes you just have to dive in and get stuck in and see what happens. And she did seem like she really enjoyed her swim. So maybe a little bit of return on your dinner is a small price to pay for that little bit of that half hour or hour of larking around that they got up to. But yes, I did go on to do a deep dive on it and just see what I could find out about this phenomenon of wild swimming. So, wild swimming is also known as open water swimming or outdoor swimming, and the beginning of the modern age of open water swimming is normally taken to be May the 3rd, 1810. That's when Lord Byron swam several miles to cross the Hellespont, which is now known as the Dardanelles, and that little stretch of water between Turkey and the rest of Europe, sort of like the English Channel, but it's a bit of a smaller gap. And he basically crossed from Europe to Asia. So that little stretch of land is seen as significant because once you leave Turkey on this side, you're in Asia, and then when you cross over the Dardanelles, you find yourself in mainland Europe. So he swam across to prove it could be done, that it was possible. And I guess that's quite inspiring in a way. If you do keep going, you will eventually get to some land. And he swam around 5 kilometers. That's sort of roughly how long it is. And it took him 1 hour and 10 minutes. And it obviously got people talking. It was a significant thing to do. And it was 1810. So, what else did they have going on apart from feats like this? So, that kind of kicked off people's interest in wild swimming, but it has been around forever. People did used to bathe in the river after all. It's not as if we've never thought, hey, why didn't I go jump into that giant pool of water that's enticing me? If you look back on the first edition of the modern Olympic Games in Athens in 1896, the swimming competition was held in open water at that time. And a lot of people are aware of wild swimming because if you do triathlons, a huge part of, at least a third of the triathlon, is you having to jump into an open body of water and swim through it because it is a harder test of endurance than swimming in your local pool. There's a lot more forces working against you when you swim in natural bodies of water. So it's definitely more of a challenge, more of an Ironman situation to put people in natural bodies of water as opposed to just letting them swim up and down a pool where there's a lot of things working in your favor. So, yes, in 2000, when the Olympic Games first included a triathlon, it was in open water. And a lot of triathlons involve open water swimming. Some of them don't for whatever reason, but a lot of times, if you take part in a triathlon, you're going to find yourself wild swimming, technically. So, the International Swimming Federation as well, they do have a lot of open water swimming events. They're not just restricted to your classic indoor pool events. So, again, if you were to get into this as a hobby, you're going to be able to find some really competitive competitions to take part in to test your level, your ability to open water swim without choking on a fish. So, good luck to you if you decide you're going to get into this, but it has really grown in popularity in recent years. There's been a lot of best-selling books recently on wild swimming. You've got authors such as Kate Rue, Daniel Start. You've got the book Waterlog by Roger Deacon. And you do also have a lot of media coverage on issues to do with wild swimming. So there's the Great British Swim, if anybody wants to get into that. You do also have Ross Edgley. I don't quite know who that is, but apparently I should. And he swam around mainland Great Britain, and that was really widely reported on. And I'm sure everybody knows somebody or has seen somebody who's attempted to swim the English Channel. So it is all around us, even though we don't think that much about it. So I would say it's very much a hobby for for people who love the water. This is definitely for water babies. If you love being in the water, it's definitely going to be something you want to try out. Lord Byron himself, the famous poet, as I mentioned, the one who started the trend, he was born with a club foot, and he says he found a freedom in the water that he could not experience on land. And he was such a geek about this that he said the achievement he was most proud of, it wasn't his poetry, it wasn't his politics, it was actually swimming across the Hellespont. So that event really stayed with him his whole life. I would mention that if you're swimming in open water, um, there are a number of benefits that tend to happen if you regularly swim in open water. It helps to boost your immune system because it stimulates the body to increase the abundance of white blood cells, probably because you're having to fight off the potential sewage that you're swimming around in. It does make you stronger and better able to withstand cold temperatures, as the water is always colder when you swim outside than the water that you'd find, obviously, in the heated indoor pools. So it's a great form of exercise, as swimming is in general, and it really works for people of all ages and all fitness levels. You don't have to be a triathlon champ to get into the water. And if people ask you, well, how do I go about it? Where do I start if I want to get more into wild swimming? They say the easiest place to start is an inland lake, and you can find plenty of them that now cater to beginner swimmers or people who want to try wild swimming. And you just need to be aware that open water swimming can be a bit of a challenge compared to normal swimming, just because the conditions are totally different. So there's the current. It can be a slow or fast moving current, and it's sort of working against you. So you need to be aware that that's going on. You don't have any walls or bottom floor to touch. It can go quite deep, so you're not going to be able to just put your feet down if you suddenly start panicking or wanting to get to the sides. You kind of have to be a fairly strong swimmer to be able to know how you will exit if anything was to happen to yourself. The water, it can also be fresh water or salt water. So again, if you're not used to that, that sort of weird little taste and everything, don't drink the water basically. And there's also going to be marine life swimming around. There's going to be fishes, there's going to be odd little animals and bugs, and that can be a bit disconcerting, especially if you're not particularly comfortable with nature or you're not particularly a fan of like fishes and bugs and things moving past your feet. You want to be aware of that. So, you also want to make sure the water quality is up to scratch. If you're going to be swimming in an open body of water, you need to know that there is going to be things in the water. So there's going to be fish, there's going to be plants, there's going to be floating debris, possibly rubbish, possibly some bacteria and algae and insects. And many of these things won't actually do you any harm, but there are a few things to steer clear from. So you want to avoid water that could be contaminated by rubbish or sewage or poisonous blue-green algae. But you also need to be aware that healthy water does have plants and fish and that their presence is a good sign. So wildlife needs oxygen to breathe. If you see bugs and fishes swimming around, that indicates good water quality. So you can check the quality of the water you're potentially swimming in before you go, and just make sure you're happy that it's up to scratch. And also, the main difference between regular swimming and wild swimming is simply going to be the temperature of the water. Indoor pools are normally between 26 to 31 degrees centigrade, whereas UK bodies of water are 10 to 15 degrees cooler than that. And so you need to prepare yourself for how cold it could potentially be. Make sure that you do warm up before you get in the water and that you give it at least 5 to 10 minutes just so your body can get used to that colder um, environment around you. And people do ask as well, where can I go to wild swim? What are the sort of most popular places to go? They do have a map on the website www.wildswimming.co.uk, and that allows you to find places that are going to be good for you to swim. I think it's quite reassuring to know that our rivers and lakes are cleaner than they've ever been. During the 50s and 60s, there was a lot of pollution of the waterways, but it's really come down. And at the moment, over 70% of our rivers are now in good or excellent condition. Obviously, we want to keep improving that. And I think people taking more of an interest to swim can only help that. But if you're looking for places to swim, river bends are often a good place to go because you have the bend that creates a shallow part and then, on the inside, and then the deep pools are on the outside. So you're going to find it easier to get into the water and to get out of the water, but you're also going to have the deeper end to swim in. And if you look for small waterfalls or weirs, they also create pools and rivers that would otherwise be too shallow for you to swim in. So if you know somewhere that has a decent waterfall, that's probably a great place you're going to be able to swim in as long as it's clean enough. Ordnance survey maps also provide information, and you can view those online. It's also worth asking people who live local to you where they swim in the summer. They might have some good spots. And older people are really great for finding out places to swim because they used to swim. They used to wild swim. They're the original pioneers. They didn't really have the sort of indoor pools that we have now, and it was very normal. It was a lot more normal to just go swimming in the countryside, etc., etc. So it might be worth calling up your calling up your granddad, and not just leaving them to be infested by COVID, and just having a chat with them about where they went swimming if they were one of those people who liked to jump in and get stuck in. See if they have any tips for you on where you could go swimming. So, some of the advice that websites like Wild Swimming have for people, which I thought was pretty good advice, I picked out some of the key pointers, things I thought you'd like to know, things I was quite glad to find out. So, they say never swim in canals, urban rivers, stagnant lakes, or reedy shallows. So, immediately, I think a lot of people think, oh, I'll just go jump into the canal. Yeah, don't do that. That's a big no. Never swim in flood water and be cautious of the water during droughts. Keep your cuts and wounds covered with waterproof plasters. Always make sure you know how you will get out before you get in. Wear footwear if you can, and never swim alone, as anything can happen and you may need rescuing, or you just might need someone who's able to alert other people to a situation that might be happening. So that's a big one. Don't go it alone, because it's not always the best thing. And I think after I'd sort of read about this whole open water swimming a little bit, I did kind of think, well, why are people doing it? What is driving people to get back in touch with the local surroundings? And again, I think a lot of people say it's a great way to notice nature around you. It's a great way to calm yourself and become at one with the surroundings, so to speak. And I did look on the website muchbetteradventures.com, and they asked some wild swimmers to tell us in their own words why they like to wild swim. And most of them said it makes them feel invincible, and it also makes them feel very present and with it. So it's a good way to kind of wake yourself up and keep you in the game. And I think I'm going to give the final word to one of these wild swimmers, the slightly famous Lindsay Cole, and she does have a book out. I don't know if it's about this, but it's about something. Lindsay Cole, and she likes to wild swim dressed as a mermaid, which is kind of the only thing I really remember from researching this topic. That there is a sport that encourages you to dress as a mermaid, so I'm all for it. Any sport that lets me go out dressed as a mermaid is a win in my book. And she says that wild swimming makes me feel alive. When I'm feeling sad, it makes me feel better. When I'm feeling fine, it makes me feel like the love child of She-Ra and Indiana Jones. So I can't really argue with that. That's like free drugs. So I think that's why they're doing it, really. And will I be wild swimming? Yes, I will. I will be wild swimming at a beach in a warm country very soon. Because that's how I like to open water swim in the beautiful ocean with no sharks and minimal animals, just nice fishes. But I mean, I'm sure I will. I'm sure somebody will drag me to somewhere when it's slightly warmer, or maybe not, maybe even now, and I will get very warm, possibly slightly toasted, before jumping into a nice enough river or lake and enjoying all the bugs and bees of the English countryside. But if anything, I think looking at all this research, it did just make me think, you know what, I haven't swam in ages, and I should go to my local pool, if anything. Maybe the wild swimming will happen, maybe it won't, but I could at least try dipping into my local pool and seeing how that's going, and trying to stay away from the piers and just work on my front crawl, work on my breaststroke, see if I can finally do butterfly, um, and see if I can still tread water as well, because that's always fun to do, and also completely bottle it when it comes to doing those weird turns at the end, when you're supposed to be like a little gymnast every time you go up and down, and not wanting to get all that water in my nose. So yeah, that's my section on wild swimming. Sounds really great. I might put it on standby for now, but I'm sure at some point there will be a wild swim in my future. So yeah, let me know. Have you been wild swimming? Are you very, very down with this trend? Am I really late to the wild swim party? Let me know. The next thing I was thinking about this week was not so much politics per se, although that was on my brain, but actually just the fact that there is a woman on Twitter named Liz Trussell, and people keep thinking that she's actually Liz Truss. So Miss Trussell has the Twitter handle at Liz Truss, and she had this before Liz Truss obviously became Prime Minister and became known as the Liz Truss. I mean, did we really know who Liz Truss was this time last year? I don't think so. So Miss Trussell has probably never had any major issues with her Twitter handle at Liz Truss. But now that we have a new Liz Truss, who is a really prominent public figure, and Liz Truss, she was late to her own Twitter, so she has the handle at Truss Liz. And a lot of people, including world leaders, have been thinking that they are messaging the British Prime Minister when they get in touch with at Liz Truss, only to find out belatedly that it's actually just some lady in Hertfordshire called Liz Trussell who sometimes replies to them just to enjoy the fact that people think she is running the country. So this kind of all came to a fore. I read the story on Sky News. I don't spend a ton of time on Sky News, sorry, Sky, but I did see this story on there and I did think, oh, this is really funny. And so Caroline Lucas, who's the co-leader of the Green Party, she wrote this really stinging attack on Liz Truss, just sort of saying, so disgusted by what has happened here in terms of how you and Boris and you and your Tory chums have been carrying on. And she sort of, put in this real message to at Liz Truss, the fake Liz Truss, and this is what happened. So Caroline Lucas, she writes to Liz Truss saying, at Liz Truss still doesn't get it. Boris Johnson did not get Brexit done. His myriad mistakes over COVID cost countless lives, and he leaves having disgraced his office. Meanwhile, she's campaigned as a right-wing ideologue and will govern as such, which is a disaster for all of us. And then another Twitter user chimed in with, and I bet she likes cake. Ah! And Miss Trussell decided, of course, she replied and said, I do love cake. So that already, like, people were like, what? Normally, the British Prime Minister doesn't let in on if they're consuming like Battenberg or Yorkshire pudding. They kind of tend to just stick to the party line. And then a few hours after this, the Swedish Prime Minister got in touch, thinking that she was messaging Liz Truss, wanting to talk about policy matters and yes, we're due to meet soon and all that kind of bag. And I'm not sure why MI5 is not watching this, but Liz Trussell then tweeted back saying, looking forward to a visit soon, get the meatballs ready. So apparently she did, the Swedish Prime Minister did realise her mistake and deleted her tweet, but clearly at Liz Trussell is basically running the world, running the free world at the moment. And then we had another Twitter user, Molly Moo, who her angle was, oh, I'm so glad a woman's been elected, what a win for feminism. And so she wrote to at Liz Truss saying, many congratulations, well done. Show them all that the best man for the job is a woman. And Miss Trussell replied, preach, sister. So again, people were a little bit confused. Why is our Prime Minister rapping on Twitter when she should be worrying about our budget and the energy crisis? Um, so yeah, I just thought that was hilarious. I think that's just great British humor at its best. We don't always take things that seriously, um, even when it comes to running the country, and it's just perfect responses across the board, especially get the meatballs ready. I do feel like most world conflicts should just be sorted out over national dishes. I'm pretty sure if we were exchanging like different national dishes at these meetings, everybody would be a lot more relaxed and we'd be a lot less worried about setting off nuclear bombs for some reason, because you could just drink some vodka and eat some, I want to say bratwurst, but I know that's not what they eat in Russia. What do they eat? Potato sochki, something with potatoes and meat. And there'd be a lot more happiness going around if we just ate and were merry instead of all that kind of stuff that always seems to be flying around whenever the boys get together for a recounting of just how much they've all fucked each other over the years. Oh my god, I said the F word, but it's my show, so I don't care. So yeah, I think the moral of that story is it pays to know who you're talking to. The Swedish Prime Minister doesn't always fact check. No. Just that one of these people is the real deal, and one of these people is an imposter. And that is very The Circle season three. So if you watch reality TV, I don't think you would have been as easily stumped as a lot of these people were when it came to figuring out who the real prime minister is. Yeah. And then the final thing I've been thinking about this week, well, I was thinking more about politics. I really was. I was going to talk about elections, but then I decided that I wanted to wait a little bit and see what else is happening over there in the parliament. And instead, I switched back to thinking about something that's been on my mind for a long, long time, way too long even, and that is G, Ghee. It's actually ghee. It's actually pronounced ghee, but I thought it was gee whiz, which is that yellow stuff that you see in a tub at a lot of Asian food supermarkets, especially Indian, and Pakistani one. Actually, I don't know about the Pakistani, Indian ones, and I've always wondered what it is. You know, can I eat it? Is it healthy? Is it a natural product? Is it a synthetic product? Like, what is it? Is it yogurt? Like, I thought it was a type of yogurt potentially. And I've just always wondered what it was. For like maybe like 12, 13 years now, I've seen it somewhere and wondered what it was all about. And so I wanted to look into it. I'm sure other people are also like, what is that stuff? It always looks like it's going to taste of marzipan, like quite sweet, but it's actually a type of butter. So after having a bit of a read, I realized it is simply a type of butter, and it's typically used as a cooking oil or as an ingredient in dishes, or even as like a paste or a mask in Ayurveda therapies. So in terms of what it's made from, it's typically made from cow's milk, just like butter. And all that you do to make it is that you melt regular butter. And then when you do that, the butter separates into liquid fat and milk solid fat. And that liquid fat is what you keep. That liquid is the ghee. And then you can get rid of the solid uh, stuff that's left. And yeah, you remove the milk solids, you stay with the liquid, and then you have ghee. It is known as liquid gold or sacred fat. It originated in ancient India when the domestication of cattle and the consumption of butter first began. So we have them to thank for the fact that some of us like to spread a bit of butter on our toast. And due to the hot climate in India, if you just had butter, it would often go rancid. So because it was, spoiling so quickly and people wanted to eat it, they decided to start clarifying the butter, which is simply separating it into the liquid and the fat. And that way they got to keep the butter for quite a while without it going off. So, yeah, so it doesn't go off very quickly, because you've separated it from the bits inside of it that actually make the milk, sorry, that actually make the butter spoil. So it's the solid part of the butter that makes it spoil so quickly. Without that, you're fine. And some of the good things about ghee is that it's heated for a lot longer than other types of clarified butter. So that gives it like a stronger, sort of slightly burnt, nuttier flavor. Um, Sort of like a bit of a caramelized flavor, which a lot of people quite like. And that's kind of sometimes why a lot of Asian dishes have that sort of quite nice, slightly nutty taste to them. You're also removing the lactose and casein from the butter to get ghee. So that means if you're lactose intolerant, you're more likely to be able to eat ghee than you are butter. So if you've had issues with butter, you might want to try ghee to see if that actually suits you more if you're someone that avoids lactose. And it's also easier to digest than butter. Obviously, it's more liquidy anyway, so it's not going to sit on your stomach the same way as the more solid butter can do. And like we say, it's completely shelf stable. It lasts a long time, even without refrigeration. So if you don't like refrigerating it, if you find that solid hard butter really annoying, because it normally is when you leave it in the fridge. You can actually get ghee and have that outside the fridge for a long time, and it's not going to cause you the same problems that it does when you have normal butter. So ghee also has a higher burning point than most clarified butters. So you do get other countries that produce a kind of ghee, literally clarified butter. So France, they tend to do the whole clarified butter thing. They like to do stuff with dairy. That's why you get that fromage frais stuff and all the other weird cheesy things you get in France, because they like to mess around with the dairy as well, just like India does. Just like who else? Who else likes to mess around with butter? I can't think right now, but Britain, we do our stuff as well. We like to cottage cheese it up. So there's a lot of countries messing around with dairy. But in terms of the clarified butter, that is something that India is quite well known for, and also France. But ghee has a higher burning point, like I said, than those other clarified butters, and that makes it ideal for frying or sauteing food. So it's actually a healthier way to fry your foods. If you like to cook at high heat, you might want to opt for ghee because it won't burn as quickly as some of the other oils that people typically use. And if you think about it, butter smokes and burns at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, but ghee withstands heat up to 485 Fahrenheit. So that's a quite a big difference in terms of the type of heat that it can withstand. But if you compare ghee and butter, they both come from cow's milk, and their nutritional profiles are very similar. Their fat content is very similar. They're both high in saturated fat, so you shouldn't be eating them in large quantities. It's 50% saturated fat, both of these products. But they do have vitamin A, E, and K. So, and that yellow color, that's a sign that you are getting some sort of nutrient, some sort of nutrient there that's giving it that yellow tinge. Um, People do recommend. Now, when I read this, I thought, oh my God, that sounds so good. This sounds delicious. If you can use ghee because it's liquid as well, so it's like kind of like fancy olive oil. You can use it as a dip for seafood, such as lobster and crab, or you can use it as a dip for globe artichokes, and that just sounds so yum. I'm not like one of these fine dining people that's, out at the Ivy every night of the week in Nobu, but it does sound pretty yum to be like dipping lobster something. I don't even know the parts of lobster something in ghee and herbs, and enjoying that as a nice dish. But yeah, there you have it, ghee. It's not that amazing to find out about, but it has been on my mind, and I have always wondered, what is it? So now I know it's just a type of, it's just a family, it's in the family of butter, and it's basically like an oily fat that you can use to cook with, and even slather on stuff sometimes. But do keep it to minimal intake, because like I say, it is saturated fat. Half of it is saturated fat, so take it easy on the old ghee. Yeah, so I guess through looking at ghee, it also got me interested in butter itself. What is butter? I never really know again what butter is really. So I had a look at that as well. And when it comes to butter, you first have to milk a cow. So you strain out the milk from the cow into a jug, and then you take that milk and you strain that milk through a cheesecloth. And what that does is it removes all the debris and the cow bits that may have fallen into the milk when you were milking. So I'm sure there'll be a bit of dirt, a bit of cow hair that sort of fell into the milk while you were milking. So you filter it and get rid of any sort of little dirt bits like that. And then you're left with your milk. And then you put the milk in the fridge for a day or two, and what happens then is that all the cream and fat in the milk will rise to the top. And then you take that cream and fat that's risen to the top, like they say, the cream of the crop, or the cream rises to the top. You take it and you skim it off and put it in a separate bowl. So it will just be like a proper sort of fatty-ish layer of cream at the top. You want to take that, put it in a separate bowl, And then if you start whisking that cream and you just keep beating it, beating it, beating it, beating it, it actually separates into butter and buttermilk. So you'll see these clumps of butter just come out of that cream mixture. And you'll also see this liquidy, buttery milk that you can sort of separate and put to the side. And then you take all those clumps of butter, and it's quite easy to do if you watch a video of it, and you just squish it together and you have butter. So it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. And you just put it in like a square, like a rectangle box, and you can just squish it into that rectangle shape that we know and love. That's the butter shape. And there you have it. You've got your own butter really easily just from churning a bit of milk. Butter is simply that fatty portion of the milk. Butter does have some nutrients, but really you get those same nutrients with milk anyway. And milk itself has more protein and carbs than butter. So if you're going for the more nutritional option, then it's going to be the milk, not the butter. And milk also doesn't have saturated fat, especially if you're drinking like low fat milk or semi-skim milk. There isn't that much fat compared to the kind of fat you find in butter, clearly. So yeah, if you're looking for, should I go for butter, should I go for milk, you want to be drinking a lot of milk and like only minimal amounts of butter to keep yourself sane, unless you like being cut out of your house through the roof. Then I say go right ahead and eat shit tons of butter, because you will be huge and potentially happier, or just a mad cow, I don't know. So yeah, I'm all for milk, or even yogurt. Milk's even sexier, more sleek cousin, um, than necessarily ingesting a ton of butter. Buttered milk, which was the liquid stuff that was left over from churning the cream, that has a lot less fat than butter. So again, that's something to look into if you're someone that, like me, does sometimes think, I don't know that I want to eat this whole cake, maybe just half the cake. Um, yeah, if you're a little bit concerned about those calories or those fat cells, then maybe buttermilk, or just milk, like I said, or yogurt is the way to go. But yeah, butter, ghee, there it is. Really simple, really straightforward things on what's going on in your fridge. There's also a lot of good butter substitutes though. If you're somebody who's thinking, I love spreading butter-like things on my toast or my crumpets or my waffles, etc., etc., then there are a lot of good butter substitutes out there. A lot of them use monounsaturated or polyunsaturated oils instead of using the whole fat saturated butter. And it tastes similar. It's some kind of like oily taste, creamy taste. So why not if that's your thing? Although, oh, good quality butter, like, is there anything like it? Every now and again, you need some good quality butter in your life, I think. I think. Um, but there are some good butter substitutes as well. I think I bought, what did I buy the other day as a butter substitute? Was it like Vitalite or like Utterly Butterly? I can't believe it's not butter. I think that was the one. I can't believe it's not butter. Um, so yeah, you do have some really great British butter substitute names. I definitely grew up with I can't believe it's not butter and Utterly Butterly, like seeing it around, which I thought was really hilarious. I was like, this is such a British thing. I don't know that, Dubai has Dubaiing me debut. I don't know, whatever their substitute would be. I don't think that I don't yeah, I think it's quite a uniquely British thing to come up with these like ridiculous names for butter like substances. Um, what would your British butter substitute name be? Is that a question I can ask? Mine would be butter me fingers. I don't know. Somebody better butter me up, maybe, or something like that. But yeah, have a look in your supermarket aisle and see what the back of those butters are saying, and see if you can find one that doesn't give you anxiety about exactly how much fat might be in it. But that is all I had time for this week, and that's all the main things I've been thinking about this week. I will talk to you in another 2 weeks when I come back for my next show, and I hope you take care and have a great October. Do subscribe. Do leave me some comments. Did you learn anything new or random this week? And the cream really has risen to the top with this show, I have to say, as always. And so let me know what's happening with you and stay well. Till next time. Bye.